The maintenance bay of the Phyrexian warship smelled like burnt metal and desperation. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead with a grease-stained rag and looked at the damaged armor plating in front of him. The massive piece of alien technology was supposed to protect the ship from enemy fire, but right now, it was about as useful as wet paper. Marcus had been working on the ship for 3 months now. 3 months since the Phyrexian Empire had taken him from Earth along with thousands of other humans. They needed workers, they said. Labor for their expanding empire. Marcus had been an engineer back home, working on satellites and spacecraft. Now he was just another slave, fixing things the aliens either couldn't or wouldn't fix themselves. The Phyrexians were tall, with dark purple skin and eyes that glowed a soft amber color. They were proud creatures who believed their technology was the best in the galaxy. They treated humans like simple animals who were barely smart enough to hold a wrench. Most of the human workers were given basic tasks like cleaning or carrying supplies, but Marcus had shown enough skill that they let him work on minor repairs. He looked at the armor plating again. It wasn't a minor problem. The molecular bonding had failed in 17 different places. The Phyrexian engineers had looked at it, declared it beyond repair, and ordered it to be scrapped. They would install a new plate, which would take weeks and cost a fortune in resources. Marcus knew he could fix it. The problem wasn't that complicated. The Phyrexians had over-designed everything, adding layers of complexity that made their systems beautiful but fragile. When something broke, their solution was always to replace it with something equally complicated. They never considered that simpler might be better. He glanced around the bay. The Phyrexian guards were busy harassing other human workers. No one was watching him closely. Marcus made a decision. He pulled out his hidden toolkit, a collection of tools he had quietly assembled over the past months. Some he had made himself from scraps, others he had borrowed and never returned. The work took him 4 hours. He bypassed the failed molecular bonding system entirely and used a more basic but reliable welding technique. He reinforced the weak points with a mesh of recycled metal that he had melted down from broken equipment. It wasn't pretty, and it definitely wasn't the Phyrexian way, but when he was done, the armor plating was stronger than it had been before. Marcus hid his special tools and went back to his assigned work. The next day, a Phyrexian technician discovered the repaired armor. There was confusion. The records showed the armor had been marked for scrap. Who had repaired it? The technician tested the armor and found it was functioning perfectly. Better than perfectly, actually. It was performing at 103% efficiency. The confusion spread. More repairs started appearing. A power conduit that had been failing for weeks suddenly worked flawlessly. A targeting system that had been glitching was now operating smoothly. A coolant leak that had stumped the Phyrexian engineers had been sealed with what looked like primitive human methods. Marcus kept his head down and continued working. At night, when most of the crew was sleeping, he would sneak through the maintenance tunnels and fix the problems he had identified during the day. He was careful. He never fixed anything too quickly or too obviously. He made sure his repairs looked accidental, like someone had just stumbled upon a solution while doing routine maintenance. But the Phyrexian engineers were getting nervous. Their pride was hurt. Systems they had declared unfixable were suddenly working. The methods used were crude and simple, nothing like proper Phyrexian engineering. Someone was making them look incompetent. They started investigating, trying to figure out who was doing these repairs. Marcus knew he was taking a risk. If they caught him, they might execute him. The Phyrexians didn't like slaves who got too clever, but he couldn't help himself. He was an engineer. Seeing broken things and not fixing them was like an itch he couldn't scratch. Besides, some of these broken systems were dangerous. If the ship's armor failed during battle, everyone would die, including him. 3 weeks after he started his secret repairs, something big broke. The flagship's main power distributor failed catastrophically. It was the heart of the ship's energy system, feeding power to weapons, shields, and life support. The Phyrexian chief engineer, a pompous male named Tharxus, examined the damage and declared it would take a month to repair, maybe longer. The problem was they didn't have a month. The fleet was heading into hostile territory. They needed the flagship operational in days, not weeks. The Phyrexian engineers worked frantically, but their complex solutions kept failing. The power distributor was a maze of intricate systems, each one dependent on the others. When one part failed, it created a cascade of problems. Marcus studied the distributor from a distance. He could see the problem immediately. The Phyrexians had routed power through 14 different regulation nodes, each one adding efficiency but also adding points of failure. One node had failed, which caused the others to overload trying to compensate. The whole system had collapsed like dominoes. The solution was obvious to Marcus. Bypass 12 of the regulation nodes and run power through a direct line with just 2 safety buffers. It would be less efficient by Vrexian standards, maybe losing 2 or 3% of power, but it would work, and it would be stable. That night, Marcus made his way to the distributor. The work was dangerous. He was dealing with enough energy to vaporize him if he made a mistake. But Marcus had steady hands and a clear mind. He worked through the night, rerouting power systems and creating new pathways. He used techniques he had learned working on Earth's old nuclear reactors, systems that were built to be reliable rather than elegant. By morning, the power distributor was humming smoothly. Marcus had made it back to his sleeping quarters just an hour before wake-up call. He was exhausted but satisfied. The discovery of the repaired distributor caused chaos. Chief Engineer Tharxis was stunned. He had been preparing to give the fleet commander bad news, and now suddenly, the flagship was operational again. He examined the repairs and was horrified. The work was crude, inelegant, and violated every principle of proper Vrexian engineering. But it worked flawlessly. Tharxis ordered an immediate investigation. He wanted to know who had done this. Security recordings were reviewed. Maintenance logs were checked. And slowly, evidence started pointing toward the human workers. More specifically, toward one human worker who seemed to be in the wrong place at the right time more often than chance would allow. Marcus was welding a support beam when the guards came for him. 6 Vrexian soldiers surrounded him, weapons drawn. For a moment, Marcus thought they were going to shoot him right there. Instead, the lead guard spoke in heavily accented English. "You come now. Queen wants to see you." Marcus set down his welding torch. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. He had known this moment might come. He followed the guards through the ship's corridors, past the areas where humans were normally allowed. They went deeper into the ship, into sections Marcus had only seen in stolen blueprints. Finally, they arrived at a massive door that led to the throne room. The doors opened, and Marcus saw her for the first time. Queen Salarix sat on a throne made of dark metal, her amber eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him want to step backward. She was larger than most Vrexians, with elaborate markings on her skin that denoted her royal status. Around her stood the War Council, including Chief Engineer Tharxis, who looked like he wanted Marcus dead. The Queen spoke, her voice echoing through the chamber. She spoke in Vrexian, and a translator device rendered her words into English. "Who fixed my armor?" she screamed, her voice filled with rage and confusion. Marcus took a breath and stepped forward. He met the Queen's eyes and answered in a steady voice, "I did." The throne room was silent after Marcus spoke. Every eye was fixed on him, and not in a friendly way. The Vrexian War Council looked at him like he was an insect that had wandered into their meal. Chief Engineer Tharxis stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "This human lies," Tharxis said, his voice sharp. "No human has the knowledge or skill to repair our systems. They are primitive creatures. This one probably damaged the systems and got lucky when they started working again." Queen Salarix held up a hand, silencing Tharxis. Her amber eyes never left Marcus. She studied him like a predator, deciding if prey was worth the effort to hunt. "You claim you repaired my armor," she said slowly. "You claim you fixed the power distributor. You claim you have been secretly maintaining systems across my flagship for weeks. Explain how." Marcus knew he was walking on a knife's edge. If he showed too much knowledge, they might see him as a threat. If he showed too little, they might execute him as a liar. He decided to stick with simple truth. "Your systems are too complicated," Marcus said. "You add layers and layers of technology, making everything connected to everything else. When one part breaks, it breaks 10 other things. I simplified the repairs, made them more basic, more reliable." Tharxis laughed, a harsh sound. "Simplified? You mean you butchered elegant engineering with primitive methods? Your Majesty, this human has vandalized our technology. He should be punished." "Show me," the Queen said, ignoring Tharxis. "Show me how you did this." Marcus was led to a nearby engineering station. They brought up schematics of the power distributor, both before and after his repairs. Marcus walked them through what he had done. He showed how the original system had 14 regulation nodes, and how he had reduced it to 2. He explained the concept of redundancy versus efficiency, and how sometimes less complicated was more reliable. The Vrexian engineers in the room looked horrified. To them, what Marcus had done was like watching someone paint over a masterpiece with crude brushstrokes. But Queen Salarix leaned forward, interested. "And this works better?" she asked. "It works more reliably," Marcus corrected. "Your way might be 3% more efficient when everything is perfect. But perfect never lasts. My way loses that 3%, but it keeps working when things go wrong." "Unacceptable," Tharxis said. "We do not sacrifice efficiency for simplicity. That is the thinking of lesser species." Marcus felt his temper rise. He had been a slave for 3 months, pushed around and treated like he was stupid. He had saved their ship, and they were calling his work primitive. "Your thinking is what caused the problem," Marcus said, his voice harder now. "You built a ship that falls apart when anything goes wrong. You design for perfection in a universe that is never perfect. That's not advanced engineering. That's arrogance." The room went deadly quiet. Several guards reached for their weapons. No one spoke to the Vrexian leadership like that, especially not a human slave. Marcus realized he might have just signed his death warrant, but Queen Salarix did something unexpected. She smiled. It was not a warm smile, but it was not entirely unfriendly either. "Arrogance," she repeated. "An interesting accusation. Tell me, human, what is your name?" "Marcus Chen." "Marcus Chen. Before we took you, what did you do on Earth?" "I was a spacecraft engineer. I worked on satellites and deep space probes. Systems that had to work for years without any maintenance or repairs." The Queen nodded slowly. "So you built for survival, not beauty." "I built for both when I could," Marcus said. "But survival always came first." Queen Salarix stood from her throne. She was even more impressive standing, towering over Marcus by almost 2 feet. She walked down the steps and stood directly in front of him. Marcus forced himself not to step back. "You have been fixing my ship without permission," she said. "You have been sneaking through restricted areas. You have been stealing tools and materials. By law, I should have you executed." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. "But," the Queen continued, "you have also kept my flagship operational. You have repaired systems that my own engineers could not or would not fix. You have demonstrated skill that I did not know humans possessed." She paused. "I am curious about something, Marcus Chen. Why did you do this? Why risk your life to fix a ship belonging to those who enslaved you?" It was a good question. Marcus had asked himself the same thing many times while working in the dark tunnels at night. "Because I'm an engineer," he said simply. "I fix things. That's what I do. And because if this ship's armor fails in battle, everyone dies, including me and the other humans." "Self-preservation," Tharxis sneered. "How typical. Is it wrong to want to live?" Marcus asked, looking at the chief engineer. "Is it wrong to use my skills to keep myself and others alive?" "You call it primitive. I call it practical." Queen Salarix returned to her throne. She sat down and was quiet for a long moment. The War Council waited nervously. Finally, she spoke. "Marcus Chen, I am giving you a new assignment. You will continue to repair and maintain this ship, but you will do so openly as part of the engineering crew. You will have access to tools and materials. You will report directly to me." Tharxis looked like he had been slapped. "Your Majesty, you cannot be serious. A human working alongside our trained engineers? It is insulting. It is dangerous. He knows too much about our systems now. He is a security risk." "He is a resource," the Queen said coldly, "and I do not waste resources. The human stays." "But your Majesty—" "Enough." The Queen's voice cut through the room like a blade. "I have made my decision. Marcus Chen will work under guard at all times. Commander Vexara will be responsible for watching him. If he attempts anything suspicious, she has permission to execute him immediately." A female Vrexian warrior stepped forward from the shadows. She was tall and powerfully built, with scars across her arms that spoke of many battles. She looked at Marcus with cold, evaluating eyes. "Understood, Your Majesty," Vexara said. Queen Salarix looked at Marcus again. "Do not make me regret this decision, human. You will fix what is broken. You will teach my engineers your methods, whether they want to learn or not, and you will do so without complaint. In return, you will be given better quarters, better food, and better treatment than the other human workers. Do you accept these terms?" Marcus knew he had no real choice, but he also knew this was an opportunity to improve his situation, an opportunity to maybe help the other humans, and an opportunity to do what he loved, engineering, without hiding in the dark. "I accept," he said. "Good. Vexara, take him to the engineering bay. Get him started on a full diagnostic of all armor systems. I want a complete report in 3 days. 3 days? Tharxis gasped. Your Majesty, a full diagnostic takes 2 weeks at minimum. Then my human engineer better work quickly, the Queen said. Dismissed. Marcus was led out of the throne room by Commander Vexara. As they walked through the corridors, she spoke without looking at him. I will be watching you every moment, she said. If you try to sabotage anything, I will know. If you try to escape, I will know. If you even think about harming the Queen or this ship, I will kill you before you can act. Understood, Marcus said. I do not trust humans, Vexara continued. I think this is a mistake. But the Queen has spoken and I follow her commands. Do your work. Stay alive, and maybe you will see Earth again someday. Marcus doubted that last part, but he kept the thought to himself. They arrived at the main engineering bay, a massive space filled with humming machinery and busy Vrexian technicians. All work stopped when Marcus walked in with Commander Vexara. Listen up, Vexara announced to the room. By order of Queen Salarix, this human is now part of the engineering crew. He will perform diagnostics and repairs as assigned. Anyone who interferes with his work answers to me. Anyone who harms him answers to the Queen. Clear? The Vrexian engineers looked shocked, angry, and confused. But they nodded. No one argued with Commander Vexara. Marcus looked around the bay at all the systems that needed attention. 3 days to do a complete diagnostic. It was an impossible deadline. But Marcus had made a career out of doing impossible things. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work. The first full day working openly in the engineering bay was harder than any night Marcus had spent sneaking through maintenance tunnels. At least in the tunnels, he had been alone with his work. Here he had an audience, and that audience hated him. The Vrexian engineers made their feelings clear without saying a word. They ignored his questions. They took tools he needed and moved them to different locations. They watched him work with expressions that mixed disgust and resentment. To them, Marcus was an insult walking on 2 legs. A primitive human doing work that should belong to superior Vrexian minds. Commander Vexara stood nearby, always watching. She never spoke unless necessary, but her presence was a constant reminder. One wrong move and Marcus would be dead before he hit the floor. She carried a plasma pistol on her hip, and Marcus had no doubt she knew how to use it. Marcus focused on the diagnostic work. He started with the armor systems, running tests on every plate and panel across the flagship. The results were worse than he expected. Nearly 40% of the armor had microscopic fractures in the molecular bonding. Not enough to cause immediate failure, but enough that a strong hit would punch right through. The ship was more fragile than it looked. He documented everything carefully. The Vrexian engineers had been signing off on armor inspections that they clearly had not performed properly. Either they were lazy, or they genuinely did not know how to spot the problems. Marcus suspected it was both. When your technology was so complicated that only specialists understood it, those specialists could hide their incompetence behind complexity. By the end of the first day, Marcus had completed 20% of the diagnostic. He was exhausted, hungry, and his back ached from bending over inspection panels, but he was making progress. Commander Vexara escorted him to his new quarters, which were considerably better than the crowded sleeping area where the other humans stayed. He had his own small room with an actual bed and a private washroom. It felt like luxury after months of sleeping on a mat. The second day was when things got interesting. Marcus was deep in the armor inspection when Chief Engineer Tharxis appeared with 3 of his senior engineers. They looked angry. Human, Tharxis said, the word dripping with contempt. I have reviewed your diagnostic reports from yesterday. You claim that 40% of our armor has structural weaknesses. This is impossible. Our armor is inspected regularly by trained professionals. Marcus looked up from his work. Then your trained professionals are missing problems. The fractures are there. I can show you. You will show us nothing, one of the senior engineers said. You are trying to make us look incompetent to improve your own standing with the Queen. Marcus felt his patience wearing thin. I don't care about making anyone look bad. I care about the fact that this ship will be in battle soon, and when enemy fire hits those weak points, people will die. Your concern is touching, Tharxis said sarcastically, but I think you are simply confused. Human eyes and human instruments cannot detect the subtle complexities of Vrexian armor. You are seeing problems that do not exist. Then explain the power distributor, Marcus said, standing up to face them. He was a foot shorter than Tharxis, but he was tired of being talked down to. Explain the targeting system I fixed last week. Explain all the repairs I made that you said were impossible. Were those problems that didn't exist too? Tharxis' face darkened with anger. You dare speak to me this way? You are a slave, a tool. You exist to serve, not to question. I exist to fix your mistakes, Marcus shot back. And right now your biggest mistake is pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't. Tharxis raised his hand and Marcus thought he was about to be hit. But Commander Vexara stepped between them, her hand on her weapon. Chief Engineer, Vexara said calmly, the Queen gave Marcus Chen authority to conduct these diagnostics. If you have concerns about his findings, you may report them to Her Majesty. But you will not interfere with his work. Those are her orders. Tharxis glared at Vexara, then at Marcus. For a moment, no one moved. Then the chief engineer turned and walked away, his senior engineers following. But Marcus could see the hatred in their eyes. He had made enemies today, dangerous enemies. You should be more careful with your words, Vexara said after they left. Tharxis is a powerful figure in the Empire. He has the Queen's ear on many matters. Then maybe he should use that ear to listen when someone tells him his armor is failing, Marcus said. Vexara almost smiled. Almost. The Queen chose you because you speak truth even when it is dangerous. But truth can get you killed just as easily as lies. Remember that. Marcus went back to work. By the end of the second day, he had completed 60% of the diagnostic. The numbers were getting worse. The armor problems were more widespread than his initial assessment. Some sections were operating at only 70% efficiency. A few were close to catastrophic failure. That night, lying in his quarters, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the battle that was coming. The Queen had mentioned they were heading into hostile territory. If they went into combat with armor this week, the flagship would be torn apart. All his work, all his repairs would mean nothing if the fundamental structure was compromised. He needed to fix it. But he needed help. One human engineer couldn't repair an entire warship's armor in the time they had. He needed the Vrexian engineers to work with him, not against him. And right now they would rather watch him fail than admit he might be right. The third day started with an emergency. One of the armor plates Marcus had flagged as critical actually failed during a routine stress test. The plate shattered, sending fragments through the testing chamber. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but the message was clear. Marcus had been right. The armor was failing. Queen Salaric summoned Marcus and the entire engineering staff to the throne room. She stood before them, her face showing barely controlled fury. Explain to me, she said, her voice dangerously quiet, how a flagship armor plate failed a basic stress test. Explain to me why this was not detected during regular maintenance. Explain to me why I had to learn about our ship's vulnerability from a human slave rather than my own chief engineer. No one spoke. Tharxis looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Your Majesty, he finally said, the failure was an anomaly. One plate does not indicate a systemic problem. One plate? Marcus couldn't stay quiet. Your Majesty, with respect, it's not one plate. It's hundreds. The diagnostic shows critical weaknesses throughout the armor system. The human exaggerates, Tharxis said quickly. He lacks the training to properly interpret Vrexian technology. Then explain the failed plate, the Queen said coldly. Did the human cause that failure with his lack of training? Tharxis had no answer. Queen Salarix turned to Marcus. How long to fix the armor? Marcus did some quick calculations in his head. If I had a full crew working around the clock, 2 weeks minimum. By myself? Impossible before the battle. Then you will have a crew, the Queen said. She looked at Tharxis. You will assign 20 of your best engineers to work under Marcus Chen's direction. They will follow his methods and his instructions without question. If they refuse, they will be removed from their positions. Your Majesty, please, Tharxis begged. Do not humiliate my engineers by placing them under human command. It will destroy morale. Your engineers' pride means nothing if we are all dead, the Queen snapped. The Korthian swarm will not care about morale. They will care about punching through our armor and killing us all. Marcus Chen knows how to prevent that. You apparently do not. The decision is made. The Queen looked at Marcus. You have 20 engineers and 5 days until we reach the battle zone. Make my ship ready for war, Engineer Chen, and do not fail me. Marcus swallowed hard. I won't, Your Majesty. As they left the throne room, Commander Vexera walked beside Marcus. You realize you have just been given an impossible task, she said. I know, Marcus replied. But impossible is better than certain death. You are an interesting human, Vexara said. Most of your kind would have broken by now. You seem to thrive under pressure. I worked at NASA, Marcus said. Impossible deadlines were just called Tuesday. This time Vexara did smile. It was small and brief, but it was real. The next 5 days were the hardest of Marcus's life. He worked with 20 resentful Vrexian engineers who hated taking orders from a human. He taught them his methods, showing them how to strip away the complicated systems and rebuild with simpler, stronger designs. Some of them slowly began to understand. Others remained hostile but did the work because the Queen had commanded it. Marcus barely slept. He moved from one section of the ship to another, checking repairs, fixing mistakes, teaching techniques. Commander Vexara followed him everywhere, a silent guardian. She began helping in small ways, fetching tools or clearing paths through crowded work areas. She never said much, but Marcus appreciated her presence. On the 5th day, with just hours before they reached the battle zone, Marcus completed the final armor inspection. He was standing in the main engineering bay, exhausted beyond words, when Commander Vexara approached with a data tablet. The Queen wants your report, she said. Marcus took the tablet and pulled up his final numbers. Armor efficiency across the flagship was now at 97%. The Corthian swarm appeared on the sensors like a plague of metal insects, hundreds of small, fast attack ships surrounded by dozens of larger cruisers. They moved in coordinated patterns that seemed chaotic but were actually carefully calculated. The Corthians were good at warfare. They had been fighting the Vrexian Empire for decades, and they knew how to hurt Vrexian ships. Marcus watched the battle unfold from the main engineering bay. Commander Vexara had ordered him to stay there, away from the bridge where he might be in the way. A holographic display showed the positions of both fleets. The Vrexian flagship was at the center of their formation, surrounded by 20 escort vessels. It looked strong, but Marcus knew the escorts were just as vulnerable as the flagship had been. He had only had time to repair one ship. The other still had weak armor. The first weapons exchange lit up the display like fireworks. Bright lines of energy fire crossed the space between the two fleets. The Vrexian ships fired heavy plasma cannons that could vaporize smaller ships in single hits. The Corthian ships responded with swarms of missiles and fast-firing laser arrays. Different philosophies of combat. The Vrexians believed in overwhelming power. The Corthians believed in death by 1,000 cuts. The flagship shuddered as the first impacts hit its shields. The shields held, but they would not last forever. Marcus watched the armor stress indicators on his monitor. The plates he had repaired were taking hits and holding strong, green lights across the board. His repairs were working, but the escort ships were not so lucky. One of the cruisers on the left flank took a concentrated missile barrage. Its armor cracked and atmosphere vented into space. The ship was still flying, but it was hurt. Another escort ship exploded completely, its weak armor failing under sustained laser fire. Marcus felt sick. Those ships had hundreds of crew members. Now they were dead because no one had fixed the problems he had identified. Your repairs are holding, Commander Vexara said, standing beside him. She had been monitoring the same displays. The flagship's armor is performing better than any ship in the fleet. The other ships needed the same work, Marcus said quietly. I told them. I told Tharxes and the War Council. They wouldn't listen. They are listening now, Vexara said, gesturing to the communication channels. Marcus could hear panicked reports from the other ships. Armor failures, system malfunctions. The same problems he had fixed on the flagship were crippling the rest of the fleet. Queen Salarix's voice cut through the chaos on the command channel. All ships fall back to defensive formation around the flagship. We will make our stand here. It was a smart decision. The flagship was the only ship that could take sustained fire. The other ships needed its protection. The Vrexian fleet contracted, forming a tight sphere with the flagship at the center. The Corthians pressed their advantage, their swarm of ships surrounding the Vrexians like predators circling wounded prey. The flagship began taking more hits, heavy impacts that made the whole ship shake. Marcus watched his monitors carefully. The armor was holding, but the stress was building. His repairs were good, but they were not magic. Eventually, something would break. Engineering team to Section 7, Marcus called out. Armor stress is approaching critical. We need to reinforce the internal supports. The Vrexian engineers who had worked with him during the repairs jumped into action. They had learned his methods. They knew how to do the quick, practical fixes that kept systems running. Tharxis watched from across the bay, his face unreadable. He had not spoken to Marcus since the battle began. A massive explosion rocked the ship. One of the Korthian cruisers had gotten close enough to fire a point-blank plasma torpedo. The flagship's shields flickered and failed. Now they were relying entirely on armor. This was the moment of truth. Marcus held his breath as he watched the stress indicators. The armor plate that took the direct hit was showing red, extreme stress. But it was holding. The molecular bonds he had reinforced were flexing under the impact but not breaking. The backup systems he had installed were distributing the stress across multiple plates. His design was working exactly as he had planned. Armor holding at 89% efficiency. One of the Vrexian engineers called out. There was surprise and relief in his voice. Good, Marcus said. Keep monitoring. If any section drops below 70%, let me know immediately. The battle continued for 3 more hours. It was the longest 3 hours of Marcus's life. He directed repair teams, rerouted power, and made constant adjustments to keep the flagship operational. Commander Vexara stayed by his side the entire time, acting as a bridge between him and the rest of the crew. When he needed something done quickly, she made it happen. She had authority that he lacked, and she used it to support his work. Slowly, the tide of battle began to turn. The Korthians were taking losses too. Their small ships were fast but fragile. The Vrexian plasma cannons were picking them off one by one, and the flagship, which should have been the Korthians' primary target, was proving impossible to crack. Every attack that should have penetrated its armor failed. The ship just kept fighting. The Korthian fleet commander must have realized they were not going to win. The swarm began to pull back, their ships retreating in organized waves. The Vrexians did not pursue. They had taken too much damage. 2 escort ships were destroyed, and 5 more were badly hurt. But they had survived. The flagship had held. When the last Korthian ship disappeared from sensors, a cheer went up across the communication channels. The Vrexian fleet had won. It was costly, but it was a victory. Queen Salarix's voice came over the ship-wide announcement system. All hands stand down from battle stations. Damage control teams begin assessments. Medical teams tend to the wounded. She paused. And someone bring Engineer Chen to the bridge. I wish to speak with him. Marcus looked at Commander Vexara. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? With the Queen, it is always both, Vexara said. Come, let us not keep her waiting. They walked through corridors filled with exhausted crew members, Vrexians who had been at their battle stations for hours, running on adrenaline and training. Some of them looked at Marcus with new eyes, not with hatred or contempt, but with something close to respect. Word had spread fast. The humans' repairs had saved the ship. The bridge was a circular room filled with command stations and holographic displays. Queen Salarix sat in the command throne at the center, looking regal despite the chaos of battle. Her amber eyes locked onto Marcus as he entered. Engineer Chen, she said, my fleet suffered significant losses today. 2 ships destroyed, 5 heavily damaged. Estimated crew casualties are in the thousands. Marcus said nothing. He did not know if he was being blamed or praised. However, the Queen continued, this flagship took more direct hits than any other ship in the fleet. It was the primary target of the Korthian assault, and it suffered 0 casualties. 0 hull breaches. Armor efficiency remained above 80% throughout the engagement. Do you know why? Because we repaired it properly, Marcus said simply. Because you repaired it properly, the Queen corrected, using methods my own engineers called primitive and ineffective, methods that Chief Engineer Tharxis claimed would weaken our defenses. She looked past Marcus to where Tharxis stood at one of the command stations. Do you have anything to say, Chief Engineer? Tharxis looked like he had aged 10 years in 3 hours. His pride had taken a beating as severe as the one the fleet had endured. He looked at Marcus, and for the first time there was no hatred in his eyes. Just tired acceptance the human was right, Tharxis said, his voice quiet. I allowed my pride to blind me to the truth. Our systems were too complex, too fragile. We built for beauty instead of function, and our people paid the price for my arrogance. It was the closest thing to an apology Marcus was likely to get. He nodded slightly, acknowledging the words. Queen Salarix stood from her throne and walked over to Marcus. She was tall enough that she had to look down to meet his eyes, but somehow it did not feel condescending. "Marcus Chen," she said formally, "you have proven yourself valuable beyond measure. You saved my ship. You saved my life. You saved the lives of everyone aboard this vessel. For this you have earned a reward." She gestured to Commander Vexara, who stepped forward with a small box. Inside the box was a metal insignia, a symbol Marcus did not recognize. "This is the mark of the Royal Engineer Corps," the Queen explained. "It is normally only given to Vrexians who have served with distinction for many years. You will be the first human to wear it. With this rank comes privileges. You will no longer be considered a slave. You will be a free member of my crew, with all the rights and protections that entails." Marcus stared at the insignia. Freedom. He was being offered freedom. After months of slavery, he would be his own person again. "There is a condition," the Queen added. "You must continue to serve on this ship. You must train my engineers in your methods. You must help us rebuild our fleet with stronger, more reliable designs. This war is far from over, and we need your knowledge." "I accept," Marcus said immediately. He would have accepted even without the freedom. He was an engineer. This was his purpose. But having the choice, having the respect, that meant something. The Queen took the insignia and pinned it to Marcus's work uniform. 2 months after the battle with the Corthian swarm, Marcus stood in the massive shipyard orbiting the Vrexian homeworld. The flagship was docked for repairs and upgrades, along with what remained of the fleet. The damaged ships were being rebuilt, but not according to the old designs. They were being rebuilt using Marcus's methods, human engineering principles applied to Vrexian technology. It was strange being here. Marcus had never thought he would see a Vrexian homeworld. When he had been taken from Earth, he assumed he would die on some distant ship or mining station, forgotten and alone. Instead, he was standing in the Empire's most important military shipyard, directing a reconstruction effort that would reshape their entire fleet. Commander Vexara approached from across the dock. She had become something like a friend over the past weeks. She no longer watched him like he might sabotage something at any moment. Now she watched his back, protecting him from Vrexians who still resented a human having so much authority. "The Queen wishes to see you," Vexara said, in her private chambers. "It is an honor. Very few are granted such an audience." Marcus wiped grease from his hands and followed Vexara through the shipyard. They took a transport shuttle to the Royal Palace, a massive structure that seemed to grow from the planet's red rock like a crystal formation. Inside, everything was elegant and precise. The architecture reflected the old Vrexian philosophy of beauty and complexity. Marcus wondered if that would change too, given time. Queen Salarix received him in a smaller room than the throne room, though it was still impressively large. She was alone except for 2 guards at the door. She gestured for Marcus to sit, which surprised him. Vrexian royalty rarely offered such courtesy. "Engineer Chen," she said, "I have been reviewing the reconstruction plans you submitted. They are radical. You propose changes to nearly every system on our ships. Some of my advisors are concerned about the cost and the time required. The cost will be less than replacing ships lost in battle," Marcus said, "and the time invested now will save time on maintenance later. These designs will last longer and need fewer repairs." "I know," the Queen said. "I have approved your plans. All of them. The fleet will be rebuilt as you specified." Marcus felt relief wash over him. He had been worried that politics might interfere with the work. "But that is not why I summoned you," the Queen continued. She stood and walked to a window overlooking her planet. "I wanted to discuss something more personal. Your people. The other humans." Marcus's attention sharpened. "What about them?" "There are approximately 7,000 humans in my empire," the Queen said. "Most of them are laborers, slaves by your definition. They were taken from Earth because we needed workers. And humans were considered expendable." "That's one word for it," Marcus said, keeping his voice neutral. "You have proven that assessment wrong," the Queen said. "One human engineer accomplished what my entire engineering corps could not. This has made me question what other capabilities we have been overlooking. What other potential is being wasted in labor camps and maintenance crews. You're wondering if there are more humans like me," Marcus said. "I am wondering if all humans are like you," the Queen replied. "Your species survived on a harsh planet with limited resources. You developed space travel using technology that we would consider primitive. You built ships meant to last decades without maintenance. These are not the achievements of an inferior species. These are the achievements of a resilient, adaptable, inventive people. Marcus did not know what to say. This was not a conversation he had expected. I am considering a new policy, the Queen continued. Humans who demonstrate useful skills will be offered positions similar to yours. Not slaves, but free members of the Empire with rights and protections. They will be tested and trained. Those with engineering knowledge will work on the fleet. Those with medical knowledge will work in our hospitals. Those with other skills will find places suited to their abilities. And those who don't have useful skills, Marcus asked carefully, will remain as they are for now, the Queen admitted. I cannot free all humans with a single decree. My empire is built on labor, and that labor must come from somewhere. But this is a start. A new direction. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. Because I need your help to implement it, the Queen said. You understand humans better than any Vrexian. You know what they are capable of. I want you to create a program to identify talented humans and bring them into positions where they can contribute meaningfully. You will have access to all human workers in the Empire. You will design the tests. You will oversee the training. You will be essentially the liaison between your people and mine. It was a huge responsibility. Marcus thought about the thousands of humans scattered across the Empire, his people. His responsibility now. I'll do it, he said. On one condition. The Queen raised an eyebrow. You negotiate with your queen? The humans who show talent and earn their freedom, Marcus said, they need to be treated as equals. Not just given better cages. They need to be able to speak freely, to question decisions, to contribute ideas. If you want the best from humans, you need to give them respect. The Queen was quiet for a moment. That will be difficult for many Vrexians to accept. The battle was difficult too, Marcus said. But we won because we tried something new. This is the same thing. A different kind of battle. Queen Salaric smiled slightly. You are either very brave or very foolish to speak to me this way. Probably both, Marcus admitted. Very well, the Queen said. Your condition is accepted. Humans who earn positions in the Empire will be treated with respect. I will make this clear to my people, and those who cannot accept it will be removed from their positions. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Hope. Real hope for the first time since he had been taken from Earth. There is one more thing, the Queen said. Your work here has attracted attention. Other powers in the galaxy are curious about the human engineer who revolutionized the Vrexian fleet. Some are curious in ways that concern me. The Korthians in particular would love to capture you and force you to work for them. So I'm valuable enough to be a target now, Marcus said. Yes. Which is why I am assigning Commander Vexara as your permanent security chief. She will lead a team responsible for your protection. You will also receive training in self-defense and weapons. I cannot afford to lose you. As if summoned, Vexara entered the room. Your Majesty. Commander, the Queen said. I have just informed Engineer Chen of his new responsibilities. He will need a full security detail and quarters in the Palace District. See to it. Yes, Your Majesty. Vexara looked at Marcus. This is going to complicate your work schedule. Everything complicates my work schedule, Marcus said. Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into the new project. He designed a series of tests that could identify humans with engineering, medical, technical, and leadership skills. He worked with Vexara to establish a safe facility where humans could be evaluated without feeling threatened. He interviewed hundreds of humans, hearing their stories, learning about their backgrounds on Earth. What he found amazed him. There were former doctors, teachers, scientists, programmers, mechanics, and artists among the human slaves. People with PhD degrees working as janitors, experienced pilots cleaning cargo holds, talented individuals whose potential was completely wasted because the Vrexians had never bothered to ask what they could do. Marcus selected 50 humans for the first training group. They would spend 3 months learning about Vrexian systems and technology, then be placed in positions throughout the Empire. It was a tiny start, but it was something. One evening, Marcus was reviewing test results when Vexara entered his new office in the Palace District. She carried a data tablet and looked troubled. Problem? Marcus asked. Perhaps an opportunity, she said. I have been monitoring communications from Earth. There are transmissions discussing you. Your people know you are alive. They know what you have accomplished. And they are asking questions about the humans taken by the Rexian Empire. Marcus set down his work. What kind of questions? Diplomatic questions. Earth governments are requesting information about human captives. They are using your success as leverage, arguing that humans should be treated better or returned home. Some are suggesting trade agreements. Others are threatening military action if humans are not released. Earth barely has a military that could reach this far, Marcus said. True, Vexara agreed, but Earth has something more valuable than military might. They have thousands of potential engineers like you. The Queen knows this. Other empires know this. There is going to be competition for human talent. Marcus leaned back in his chair, thinking, so humans might become valuable as something other than slaves. You already are, Vexara said. You just need the rest of the galaxy to realize it. Marcus thought about Earth, his home. He had not allowed himself to think about it much because the pain was too great. He had assumed he would never see it again, but now maybe there was a chance. If humans became valuable enough, if Earth became important enough, maybe there could be a way back. What are you thinking? Vexara asked. I'm thinking about the future, Marcus said. About what happens when humans are no longer seen as expendable.